Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this meeting to order this morning, January the 19th, 2016. It does look like we have a quorum present this morning, so I wanted to just say good morning to everyone. We'll begin the meeting this morning with the invocation, and since we don't have a pastor here, I'm going to ask Supervisor Steve Moss if he would do the invocation, and then Supervisor Watson would do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you very much, Supervisor, or Madam Chairman. Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. We thank you for our great country, and we ask your divine wisdom for all our leaders here today. May we be given the wisdom and courage in the decisions we make. We ask that you guide and direct our meetings so that it is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. We thank you for the accomplishments of reaching our goals. We pray for these things in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorneys on any item contained within the agenda pursuant to ARS 38431.03A3 and 4. The chair will now entertain a motion and action to call for an executive session to be held on February the 1st, 2016 at 9:30 a.m. or at the conclusion of the regular meeting, whichever is later, for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38431.03A3 and 4 to discuss items noticed on the agenda with an asterisk. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, going on to the official business to come before the board. Discussion pending or contemplated litigation claims and demands. Attorney Ekstrom, do we have anything?
We do not, Madam Chair.
All right. Are there any committee or legislative reports? Supervisor Johnson, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I have just to advise the board that the NACO conference is coming up, and I have I'm part of two resolutions we'll be pushing. One of them is to do with H.R. 4313, which is protecting historical county roads and right-of-ways, and the other one is opposition to add to the BLM National Landscape Conservation System. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Watson.
Nothing this morning.
And Supervisor Moss.
Nothing this morning, thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
Nothing.
And I have nothing. Do we have a county administrator's report?
I have no report today, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the December 22nd, 2015 Board of Supervisors special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We do have one person signed up that would like to speak during the call to the public. Mr. Steve Robinson, if you'll approach the podium. Please give us your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm Stephen Robinson, 3439 North Bowie Road, Golden Valley. Chairman, Supervisors, staff, first off, I want to thank Supervisor Johnson for the article in Saturday's News Herald about the roads and getting rights of way. I think that's an important issue. Recently, I've discovered some public documents that shed light on the legal and proper process for establishing county highways, acquiring rights and roadways, and even regarding maintenance of county roads. Those documents I've reviewed are the bylaws for the Mohave County Transportation Commission, the Policies and Procedures Memorandum for Establishing County Highways number 2000-1, and then Senate Bills 1040 and 1281 from the 50th Legislature's Second General Session. The Transportation Commission was approved after Supervisor Johnson had campaigned for it and established a fair and impartial process for reviewing and approving county highways. There are several important principles that I found in the Transportation Commission. It says it shall, and that word is mandatory, act as the recommending body to the BOS on planning and construction of capital improvement transportation projects. And I thought that was significant because they do have a very important process in doing that. In fact, all 8 articles, or all 8 sections under the Transportation Commission's duties and responsibilities use the word shall. And one of the important points is that primarily
Our speakers, the State Library, so there'll be no charge for that, or the other person that's coming on advocacy. And so the minimal costs will be a basic lunch, probably sandwiches.
We don't have mileage for all of our employees that are traveling from all these areas?
We do plan on using county vehicles because we do want to cut down on those transportation costs.
Those are the only questions I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anything
Do
else?
any of the other supervisors have any questions, starting with Supervisor Watson?
I have no other questions.
And Supervisor Moss?
None.
And no. All righty. Thank you very much for that explanation. And I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the closure of all library locations on Friday, May 26, 2016, so that all staff may attend the mandatory staff development day.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion that's seconded. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Going on to item number 18, approve utilizing Mohave Educational Services Cooperative Contract Number 12E ESI-0517, temporary recruitment services with Educational Services Incorporated for employee staffing for Sherry Cullison as Superior Court Judicial Assistant for the Honorable Judge Stephen F. Kahn, effective January the 19th, 2016 through June 30th, 2016, for the amount of $26,154.67, including all applicable taxes, fees, and Arizona State Retirement System required alternate contribution rate as applicable, and authorize the county's presiding judge to sign all necessary and convenient documents on behalf of the county. Funding will be sourced to 100-01-2901, OBJ 43190, and this was pulled by Supervisor Angus. So Supervisor Angus, did you want Kip Anderson to come forward?
Yes, please. Okay, so we have another example of somebody who retired, and now we're hiring them back on a contract, commonly referred to as double dipping. So is this a very necessary thing? Explain this. Why couldn't she have stayed another year?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, Chairman, Supervisor Angus. Sherry Cullison works for Judge Kahn. Judge Kahn will turn, I guess it's okay for me to tell everybody this, will turn 70 in 2017. Judges have to retire when they turn 70. So Sherry has been with Judge Kahn for over 25 years as his judicial assistant, and I guess they decided she felt it was time to retire. We were working on a plan to replace her. Judge Kahn and her visited, and he really wants to keep her as his judicial assistant through the time that he continues to work. So is it really necessary? In Judge Kahn's eyes, it is. He felt very strongly about it. We visited about it. I talked with Judge Gertler, and Judge Gertler is busy this morning, or he'd be here as well.
When did she retire?
She actually just retired last week.
Right, so she could have stayed on for another.
She certainly could have, but she's, at some point you reach your maximum multiplier in the Arizona State Retirement System,
I
and then
understand that, but,
right.
It's a problem. It's a problem for all taxpayers, and I thought we were trying to, so I just wanted to point this out, that this
Yeah.
is not something I really want to see too often.
Right, and when we spoke with Judge Gertler about it, we certainly recognize that. It's not a practice the Superior Court wants to get into. We spoke with our division heads. The other judges said, look, this isn't something we're advocating or promoting. However, in this situation, it was felt that given Judge Kahn's limited time left on the bench and her willingness to continue on, that we would move forward with it. So certainly appreciate your consideration of that request. I understand your concerns, and we certainly respect those.
Okay, thank you.
I have a
Supervisor
question.
Motz.
Would her contract with the MESCS specify that Judge Kahn's retirement date is her date that she is no longer going to be employed under this new system with the county?
Excellent point. That wasn't put forward in what we're currently working on. We worked through procurement. As I found out, there's a lot of process to all of this, and I was trying to do a little bit of it on my own, and then I got a hold of procurement and worked through them. I spoke with the Administrative Office of the Courts as well to make sure they didn't have any concerns. Found out that they've done the same thing with some staff, but we could certainly work that in. The one that we have before you is through the end of this year, the fiscal year. They work on a fiscal year basis as well. So we would then, in the budget process, do one more that would run through June of 2017 when Judge Kahn retires. And that's a great suggestion, and I will ask them to put that in, and so that it kind of ties it and maybe partly addresses, Supervisor Angus's concerns as well.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Supervisor Watson, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
And Supervisor Johnson?
Mr. Anderson,
Supervisor Angus pulled it before you could, didn't she?
I don't know what made you think I'd pull it, but
Sorry.
no. Has the PTO time, like we just gone through a big thing with everybody's PTO, and everybody claimed how we burn all the PTO time off before we hire a replacement. Has that been done?
No, that has not been done. We will be taking that out of another court fund to pay that out. We do have some salary savings, and I know County Manager Hendricks encourages us to try to use that to help with the county budget. There is some salary savings from another employee that's out on a long-term illness that can maybe perhaps help offset it, but we also have funds in one of the other court funds that we will use. I would note on that regard that with Ms. Cullison coming back, we will be bringing her back, meeting the new requirements that were just passed by the board as far as the new PTO time and using those numbers for her contract going forward. So we certainly are trying to meet the new, PTO that was passed. But we will cover her payout with court funds out of another account that has accrued some extra funds.
Right, and it's not, nothing to do with Ms. Cullison, but what the board, just want to make sure the board understands that we had a lot of people coming before us saying that we use that time up and we don't incur more costs, and here, the first one back, we're already incurring those costs. But I have no questions. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And just to be clear, this is not a pay raise for Ms. Cullison, and she's working for 6 months until the
Right.
honorable judge retires, and then they'll both retire at the same time.
It actually is a little bit of a pay decrease. There's certainly some savings to the county. We're no longer paying into her health care costs. There are some savings on her retirement costs. We have to pay the alternate contribution, but there is some savings to the county of the tune of about $3,200 over the next 6 months.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item number 24,
I move that we approve, you mean item 18?
or
To
18,
make
I'm
sure I'm
sorry,
right.
yeah.
I move that we approve item 18 with the condition that any contract which is ultimately issued not exceed Judge Kahn's retirement date.
Now I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have four yeses and 1 no. Motion passes. Okay, now going on to item number 24.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve unless somebody else wants to discuss it. I've gotten the information I need.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to public hearings. I'd like to open the public hearing on item number 25. Discussion of possible action, approve Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2016-012, establishing a 2.44-mile tertiary maintained section of Cali Lucero from Stockton Hill Road to Avenida Obrego to be accepted into the Mohave County Road Maintenance System for regular maintenance only to the degree of improved as a gravel roadway in the North Kingman area. Okay, we have no one that has signed up to speak on this item, so I'll close the public hearing. I do apologize. Mr. Stephen Robinson? You state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Stephen Robinson, 3439 North Bowie Road, Golden Valley. I support the item, but I have 3 questions that I'd like to address based upon the fact that this was a tertiary road approved in November of 2013. My first question is, did this road qualify for regular maintenance when it was accepted as tertiary? Tertiary has a different standard, 28 feet of road width, rocks less than 3,000. It doesn't meet the regular standards for a regular road. So that's my first question. Second question, it shows according to the county's road record that this was an unsurfaced road as late as 2009, June of 2009. So my question is, it now shows that it's gravelled and it's a lot wider with wider right-of-way, and thus it now qualifies for standard or regular maintenance. So my question on that is, who paid for the improvements? Because it was at tertiary in 2013 or 2003. It's now gravelled, it's now graded. Did that get paid for by the county? And in fact, I want to put this down for them to read, because this says, the Board of Supervisors may spend public monies, but before money can be spent, the road shall be laid out, opened, and constructed without cost to the county and completed pursuant a plat in accordance with standard engineering road specifications. The exception to that is in subsection B, that if roads were laid out, constructed, and opened before June 13th of 1990, money may be spent on them, even if the roads were not constructed in accordance with subsection A of this section. Now, there's 2 points. One, this was tertiary road. It was approved for the public in 1982. It was laid out according to the guidelines. And at that time, when it was approved in 2003, the roads had to be open to the public prior to 1975, not the June 13th, 1990 date that was changed in 2012. So I'm just wondering, how did this road get approved, or how did this road get improved, and who paid for it? Because by statute, the county could not pay for it. And that's all I'm concerned with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Director Lukowski, if you'd like to come up and answer those questions.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members
Good morning.
of the
And
board.
before you speak, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. So if you'd just address Mr. Robinson's questions, and then we'll see if any of the supervisors have questions for you.
Correct. Cali Lucero was accepted for tertiary maintenance in 2003 by Mohave County. At the time of acceptance, the conditions by which Cali Lucero were opened up, laid out to, and turned over to the county did satisfy the tertiary maintenance standard. It's unclear whether the status of the roadway was satisfactory for regular maintenance at the time, but the reason why Public Works and the Board of Supervisors considered the tertiary maintenance was that was the petition that was presented before Mohave County. With regard to gravel versus unsurfaced, those words are often used interchangeably. To my knowledge, the roadway Cali Lucero has not been improved with regard to importing any specific material or making any surface improvements per se. It still remains an unsurfaced road. One can call it a gravel road. However, what staff found is this road does carry about 277 vehicles per day, and upon inspection, including an as-built survey, we did find and confirm that the cross-section of the roadway, including the roadway traveled way width and shoulder width, does satisfy Mohave County standards for regular road maintenance. And what we see as staff in recommending this roadway be transitioned from a tertiary maintenance interval to a regular maintenance interval is that we will be seeing significantly less time per service interval in maintaining the roadway, as opposed to our once or twice a year service under the tertiary standard, where we really had to spend a considerable amount of time on the roadway, given its traffic volume, in making certain grading activities and repairs as such to maintain a relatively rideable road surface.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the supervisors have any questions for Director Lukowski? Supervisor Moss?
Was this item submitted to the Transportation Committee before being brought to us?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Moss, this item did not involve a county highway petition, so it was not presented before the Transportation Commission.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Johnson?
looking over the governor's budget, I see that he's not going to be reinstituting our HERF funds, and deeper cuts could be taken in. Are you taking that into consideration when we're taking in more roads?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, yes, in the context of providing for a more efficient service interval to Cali Lucero, we essentially saw that the maintenance of this roadway under the tertiary standard versus the regular maintenance would not cause an undue impact on the blading service, blading route, as you will, for this particular corridor, the Stockton Hill corridor. The intervals by which we'll be performing regular maintenance will yield a lesser time per service interval in providing maintenance versus the once or twice a year that we had to pull a blade off to do significant blading.
That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, if there are no other comments or questions, Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Lutowski and the Road Department for identifying the amount of traffic on this road. 277 vehicles per day is a lot of traffic on a dirt road. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Resolution 2016-12 establishing 2.44 miles of tertiary maintained section to be accepted as Mohave County road system for regular maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? I'll second it. All those in favor say...
I have a comment, Madam Chairman.
Absolutely. Supervisor
Chairman,
Moss.
I believe I've stated in the past, and I will state again, I don't really care if it's a public highway or a tertiary road or some other system. We have a transportation committee, and I would like to see every roadway that is going to be brought, proposed to be brought into the county system go through that transportation committee, and for that reason, I'll be voting no on this issue.
Okay, okay. I don't disagree with your comments, and is that something we can have staff look into? Mr. Hendricks?
If the board so directs, we can agendize it for the board, and I would assume Supervisor Moss would like to sponsor that.
I would be glad to do that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
No.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, if I'm counting right, I have 3 yes and 2 noes. All right, motion passes. Going on to the regular agenda, under Mike Hendricks, Mohave County Administrator, item number 26, discussion of possible action, Ray requests from Bullhead City to directly convey and/or sublease land south of the Laughlin Bridge and outside of Davis Camp. We have one person that has signed up to speak on this item, Mr. It's hard to read, but it's Vance Paul, or Janice
Miss.
Paul? I'm sorry, it's, the J looks like a V.
No
Good morning.
problem.
Could you please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, Madam Chairman and Supervisors, my name is Janice Paul, and evidently my handwriting is continuing to deteriorate. I work for the City of Bullhead on the City Manager's Office, and I am here to request that the county work with the city to enter into some type of agreement to manage that southwest corner of the Laughlin Bridge and Bullhead's and Highway 95. The land area, I don't know if this will show up. This is the property that I'm asking about today. That property is currently used by members of the community and several tourists to boat, fish, swim, etc. The city performs maintenance on that area on a regular basis, as well as members of the Colorado River Heritage Greenway Trail Association. They've adopted that area and also helped to keep it clean and have put trash receptacles in that area, and they clip and the vegetation every so often. So we're just asking to formalize that process so that the city could take over that area through some kind of sublease with the county. And it is our understanding that
Oh, go ahead.
a portion of it is Arizona State sovereign land that could be leased directly to the city, and the part that is part of the Davis Camp lease, that would be a sublease. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, and we'll start off with questions from Supervisor Angus.
Hi, Janice.
Hi.
I'm very familiar with this area. I live near it. The city takes very, very good care of it. I know all of the volunteers who go down there, and it is now a place where visitors go, and I don't think they launch, but they go and they hike down there, and it's just a very, and if the city hadn't taken care of it and maintained it, I don't think it would be that kind of place now. So I thank you for that, and I'm in support of this.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Moss, do you have any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Supervisor Watson
I don't.
or Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any kind of recommendation from our Parks Department? If not, maybe we can continue until we get a recommendation. Unless you're nothing back up.
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, one of the, this particular piece of property doesn't have direct access except for under the bridge, and actually from a trespass under the bridge from Davis Camp. There is a pseudo driveway that's actually a maintenance driveway that's in conflict with the intersection at the intersection that was shown of 95 and the bridge, and the county's taken an active role at trying to shut that access off because we believe it's not a feasible or safe access for the public. The county has not been maintaining this particular 3 to 4 acres at all, and has not been able to adequately control the access, and it would take some considerable expense to be able to do that. The only viable access, I think, that Bullhead City was actually looking at was coming into some sort of an agreement with Laughlin to allow people to access through the Laughlin parking lot that's just adjacent to and south of the site. We believe in the agreement that we would, if staff was directed to work with the city of Bullhead City and develop an agreement, we would certainly be in favor of putting some indemnification language into that agreement, which I believe would be of a tremendous benefit to Mohave County, so that that responsibility for the maintenance and the liability would rest with Bullhead City, and that I believe they're amenable to accepting that. So my recommendation from a county administrative perspective would be to go ahead and enter into some lease or sublease agreement with the city of Bullhead City to move forward with this and actually allow the same utilization that's occurred for years and years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Has the city thought about that? I know we've talked about that ingress, that
Yes,
entranceway, and have you thought of a solution other than entering through that parking lot?
As County Administrator Hendricks said, we have or are considering some type of entrance through the Laughlin property to the south, because we also agree that that access point that's currently exists is not safe.
Okay.
It's just about, as soon as you come around the corner, it's like right there.
Okay, that was going to be my question too. I know this has been a problem for, safety-wise with the
Yes.
traffic. And then the transients for years have used the area under the bridge as
Yeah.
a camping area, and it's been pretty unsightly at times. So I see this as a win-win. Would there still be access by going under the bridge into this area? Should we come to an
I
agreement?
think that would be something we would have to work out with the county because it is Davis Dam, or I'm sorry, the Davis Camp, part of the Davis Camp lease, and, that is under your control, so we would have to discuss that as part of that.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions of Ms. Paul? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? So I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that Mohave County enter into agreement with Bullhead City to directly convey and/or sublease the land south of the Laughlin Bridge and outside of Davis Camp with, how would we say it, an indemnification clause in that agreement.
I'll second that. Just to clarify, we're directing staff to negotiate that agreement
Staff,
and bring it
yes.
back to the board?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have one opposed, Supervisor Johnson. Going on to item number 27, discussion and possible action. Ray authorized the Economic Development Department to actively market vacant county properties, and in the case of any specific interest, bring prospective offers back to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. All right, I have no one signed up to speak on this item. Mr. Hendricks, would you like to open this up?
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. And just briefly, Mohave County, through our Economic Development Department, has recently received at least one request, more than one request of interested parties wanting to look at potentially purchasing Mohave County property. And I believe the way the market is currently going, I would like to be able to do simple things is like put signs, for sale signs or interest signs on those pieces of property to see if there are interests, with the understanding that if we do receive a letter of interest to sell the property, that letter of interest in accordance with our land sale property would necessarily need to be brought back in front of the board to make a decision on moving forward with selling that property. So this particular item would allow our Economic Development Department to actively market, post property on our site, put signs on our property that they are for consideration for sale, and possibly generate some interest.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board members? And I think Supervisor Johnson looks like he does.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we already have a county policy for sale of county property. I believe we already have that we've adopted. And also under state statute, we sell at public auction after 30 days previous notice given, typical language that they have. And I know we have 2 prior resolutions on the sale of property, so I think maybe we should look at that before we do anything, because if anybody wants it, we still have to go off with a public auction. Somebody just can't come and buy it from us.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
And Supervisor Johnson, you're absolutely correct. There is a policy, and I think I referenced that, and state law in Title 11 that actually dictates that if we identify a piece of property, there are 2 methods of disposing of the property, but if it is to the public, it would be at a public auction, and we would need to realize at least 90% of that value of the property. So you're absolutely correct. What I don't have the authority to do is anything leading up to a letter of interest. So I can't even, it was discussed recently that why don't we have a for sale sign on a or several pieces of property. And me as your county administrator don't even have the authority without board approval to go and post a for sale sign or advertise a piece of property on our website. So that's all I'm asking is for the board to nod their head and say, yes, please allow economic development to actively market some of our properties. and that would be our vacant properties.
Madam Chair,
Thank you. Supervisor Moss.
I think, and I just make sure I understand you, County Administrator Hendricks, I think we're exactly on the same page. We are going to comply with the board policies and state law when it comes to the actual sale. This is to give you the authority to let the world at large that individual items of property held by the county and which are non-productive and may even be detrimental to the county in some ways, are actually available for them. And so once we know we have the interest from these prospective buyers, then we can follow that state disposal process.
Madam Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you
Supervisor
very
Moss.
much, County Administrator Hendricks.
Madam Chair, I believe we already have, I don't know if the new supervisors do or not, but in the past, we've had books with all the property the Mohave County owns in the offices and available to the public or realtors or whoever has an interest to come in and look at them. And then if they have an interest in any of the properties, they can, ask the county to go to sale. Would that be something we could just do, is to have IT or, Public Works through economic development list all those properties, put every one of the locations on the county webpage, and anybody interested in any of them can.
And Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, that would be part of the process that I'm asking authority for. And yes, that has been part of my discussion with economic development, is an idea of, if possible, a mini MLS listing on our website of all the county properties that's available for sale. But I do need your authority to be able to move forward with that.
Okay, Supervisor Watson.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the Economic Development Department to actively market the vacant county properties, and in the case of any specific interest, bring the prospective offers back to the Board of Supervisors. And
I'll second that.
motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I just wanted to make a comment before I call for the vote that we have several properties that the market has not been good for many, many years, and I feel that the market right now is probably as good as it's going to get for a long time, and I think it's timely that we do try to sell some of this property if people are interested. And then I have a question for the county administrator. If we would sell a property, would that money go back into the general fund, or would it go into the capital improvement fund?
Madam Chairman, that would be up to the board on where that money would go. It would be my recommendation, since it is capital and it is a one-time realization that it wouldn't be utilized for operation and maintenance, which is an ongoing expense, that any monies that are capital would be used for capital or would be used for contingency.
All right, thank you very much. And we have a motion and a second, and I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Going on to item number 28, discussion of possible action, reference ratification of the new Open Fire Board members, James Tobin and John Schnetter, and accept the resignation of Bonnie Nowak as the temporary administrator for the Open Fire Board. The backup materials for this, I apologize, were just handed out this morning, but they include the 2016 minutes and the resignation letter from the administrator, Bonnie Nowak. So is there any questions or discussion?
Madam Chair, the only question I have is I see just two names on this. There's no background for anybody to look at and say where they live or what they do for a business or what their background are. But I'm not voting for it anyway, so it doesn't make much difference.
I have met these new board members. They have lived in the community for a number of years, and they do work in the community. So I can ask the fire board to provide their letters of application, which they do have on file. So, any other discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we ratify the new Open Fire Board members, James Tobin and John G. Schnittner, and accept the resignations of Bonnie Nowak as the temporary administrator for the Open Fire Board.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Supervisor Johnson is opposed, and motion does pass. Going on to item number 29. This is under Supervisor Angus's name. Discussion of possible action reference, direct the Development Services Director to research the policies and procedures implemented by other Arizona counties for providing exemption to regulating the use or occupation of land or improvements for agricultural purposes, and based on the findings, develop a proposed policy and procedure for consideration by the Board of Supervisors within a reasonable timeframe. This was continued by the board on their November 16th, 2015 meeting. Supervisor Angus, I'll turn this over to you.
Yes, we had asked at that meeting that staff come back to us with a report about how we are giving out ag exemptions and if we are abiding by the state law and how other counties do it. So if Mr. Hahn is ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Angus, in accordance to the directives received from the board, we review the policies and procedures of other Arizona counties. This is for providing exemption from county ordinances regulating the use of occupation and of the land or improvements for agricultural purposes. Our evaluation and interpretation of the applicable Arizona revised statutes 11.812A, we have also reviewed two relevant court decisions. The first, the Braden Trust case, which makes it clear that agricultural exempt property is exempt from land use regulations and building codes. The second case was the Raven Rock case that supports county's efforts to develop and apply reasonable processes when specific property should benefit from agricultural exemption. That is, the county can develop a policy and procedure, and that's what is in front of the board right now. Currently, Mohave County has a policy and procedure for recognizing agricultural exemptions. And it has been in effect for in the past 30 years or so. According to that current procedure, the property owner simply fills out an affidavit, which is reviewed by Development Services, to verify that qualifying agricultural use of the land is stated on the application. But Development Services does not inspect the property to verify that the activity is actually taking place, and Development Services relies on the word of the applicant. So we researched all other Arizona counties. In our research, we found that 6 counties have clear policies and procedures. These are namely Coconino, Gila, Maricopa, Santa Cruz, Yuma, and Yavapai counties. So all of these counties with specific procedures have something common, that they require an agricultural classification by the county assessor as a prerequisite for applying the exemption to land use regulations. In the remaining Arizona counties, we didn't find clear procedures, but their website directs the applicant to the assessor's office again, implying that the assessor's determination is applicable. So based on practices common in other Arizona counties, the board may consider adopting a similar policy and process that is require classification of agricultural from the county assessor as a prerequisite for obtaining agricultural exemption. And I just wish to point out, if the board chooses to approve the new policy, which is in the backup material as Exhibit A, we wish to point out it would recognize all existing agricultural exemptions as grandfathered. And if you have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I think we were given the task to look at the Arizona counties, and that procedure that we provided there, a recommended procedure, would bring the county in line with other Arizona counties. There is some pros and cons to that. It would definitely clarify the procedure. It would eliminate all confusion, because a lot of people are confused that the assessor gave agricultural exemption and development services didn't, or vice versa, even though it's for different purposes, different statutes, but there was a confusion. Second, it would cut down on the procedures, because once the assessor determines it, the assessor has a clear procedure, and it's prescribed by the Department of Revenue.
Right.
And they have clear rules. They do strict inspections, they do evaluations. So that's a well-defined procedure, and to duplicate that or add to it by development services could cause confusion. So it would certainly simplify everything. We thought about issues that some counties require a site plan, for example, to show. But again, the assessor already makes the inspection, then it would just cause confusion. We thought about, maybe we could charge a fee for it, but if we just go with the assessors and then we just do administrative work, then there's no fee required on that. So there's a lot of positives going with the assessor. There is some concerns by some people. What happens with those that already have exemption, and talking with attorneys and the attorney's office, it would be difficult to take away property rights. There's issues like Prop 207 and potential other issues. So that procedure would grandfather them. It would also may cause some future concerns for like hobby farmers, very small farmers that may not qualify by the assessors. But overall, that's what basically all Arizona counties are doing. And I was asked the question, why didn't Mohave County do it? I don't know. It's been in process for 30 years. But it would provide a clear procedure and simple procedure.
Is there someone from the assessor's office who can come in?
Good morning, Mr. Filger.
Good morning.
What can you add to this?
I'm sorry?
What can you add to this?
Simply the fact that I represent the assessor's office, and we certainly do have policies and procedures in place currently. And the Department of Revenue provides an agricultural manual. They provide forms and procedures. It is not just automatic that you get agricultural status. For example, if you were to apply for a grazing status, you would have to have 40 head of cattle. However, in the departmental manuals, most of Mohave County qualifies for 3 head per section, which means that an owner would have to have control of at least 8,000 plus acres to qualify as a ranching operation. That could be either privately owned land or a combination of private and state land leases or BLM leases. To be a farmer or to qualify for high-density agricultural properties, the statute states that you have to have 10 acres minimum for nuts. If it's high-density agricultural, that could be anything from grapes to et cetera. There's no minimum acreage classification, but the property has to be in production 3 of the past 5 years. It has to be a profitable operation. It has to be managed in a professional way, et cetera, et cetera. So we certainly support the new policy. We think it will benefit the county because currently, if an owner came to developmental services with 5 acres or less, and they were granted agricultural status by planning and zoning or developmental services, that meant they were exempt from building permits, and the assessor's office would not necessarily be aware that that activity had occurred, nor would we be aware that a building was being built. So I think this sort of tightens up the process. Any questions? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson.
I guess the question I would have, it probably, I don't know if you can chime in, but you brought up a good point, Mr. Hunt. What is the minimum lot size that we've been giving these exemptions to?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, the minimum property size is defined by the statutes. It must be 5 contiguous acres of land.
So we've given none out that are less than 5 acres.
That's correct, yes.
But yet you don't have a list to tell me today, all these people you want me to grandfather in.
I don't have a list with me, but we can create a list. We have documentation, yes.
We can create a list. Do we know how many people have done this? Offhand, I mean, I guess.
No, I don't know, I'm sorry.
I guess the one problem I would have would be with the grandfathering in, because if people just came and said, hey, I'm doing this, you did no check on them, I think they should all be reauthorized by an inspection of some kind.
Well, if I may add to that, they would not just grandfather in forever. Basically, the new policy and procedure states that if the assessor revokes the classification, the property will no longer be exempt and shall be subject to all requirements. So they would lose it. Once they don't do agricultural production as defined by the assessor, then they would automatically lose the exemption. That's clear for everyone. And also, any structures built under the exemption would have to comply with all codes once the property loses the exemption.
Right, but we have, I guess what I need is a number, because I'm asking the assessor now to say, I don't know if I'm saying here's 100, here's 1,000 new pieces of property for you to verify that they're all compliant, you know, because I don't want more bodies first thing if we do that. I guess until we get a number, does anybody have any kind of an idea of number of how many parcels we're looking at?
And maybe our planner, Scott, may have a number here. Do you have a number?
This is just from 2006 to...
Can you talk to that? Because I'm not
Madam Chairman?
not familiar with it.
Yes. Go
One of
ahead.
the, I think what, and I apologize, Director Hunt, for interrupting you, but one of the things that needs to be clarified is with this new policy, it was my understanding that the assessor would not have any additional work or cost at implementing this procedure because he already performs this activity. All he would be doing is verifying, or you would have a policy in place to verify that the assessor provided that exemption. Also, in addition to not costing the assessor any additional money, it would not cost development services any additional employees or costs. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's exactly correct. That would be a simplified procedure. There would be no extra cost involved, no extra fees, and no extra work for the assessor or development services. And if I may answer Supervisor Johnson's question, I don't have the total numbers, but Scott just provided me, he did the research on that. He provided me with the numbers going back to 2006, how many exemptions were approved. And back in 2006, there was 9, 2007, there was 5. And then, don't want to bore you with the numbers, but it's somewhere between 18 to 30. 30 was the highest in 2009. In 2015, we had a high number again, 29. I'm sorry, 2013, there was 42. So that's the range, how many was approved each year. And of course, if they stop doing the agricultural production for any reason, they lose that exemption automatically.
So during the depression we're in, or recession we're in, all these people decided to go with the agricultural designation for their property, and we're to believe that all those people are farmers?
Well, they have, according to our previous or existing procedures, we just went with the law, which is basically we assume that the law is executing law, that if they do agricultural production, we took their word. We checked on it, that are you doing grazing or growing some kind of vegetables, and if they check that, then we approved it. Now, we didn't do inspections, so I can only make assumptions, how many actually did agricultural. I'm sure many of them did, and the big farmers did, and the small ones probably doing some hobby farming or gardens or things like that.
I guess the only thing I would like to see is if the numbers are smaller than I thought. I thought the numbers were higher than that. But if the numbers are that small, I still believe there's a cost to it, but I think we should authorized to have them all verified. I mean, if we're looking at 100 or 200, how long can it take, us to drive by and do an inspection of them?
The assessor's office did receive from Developmental Services a spreadsheet, and we checked those parcels. It's less than 300 parcels going back to 2006, has been stated. The majority of them are still vacant parcels, but we have them on a tickler list so that each time we go out in those particular areas, we'll be checking those parcels. None of them have qualified for agricultural status per the assessor's office. So they're being valued based on market.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Supervisor Angus?
I have a question. When you said if they stop doing agriculture, they lose it, but if you're not checking it, how do you know?
Supervisor Angus, the assessor is checking it. The assessor, if the board approves this new procedure, the assessor will be doing inspections. They set up
Right,
to
but
do
that wasn't happening before.
That wasn't happening before, but as pointed out by Ken, then they're going to be checking on those properties that have been grandfathered, and in the future, the new properties, they will do that procedure, what they do today.
So if you said that if you give the ag exemption and then you went and looked and there are a lot of vacant lots, so you're still valuing it not as an ag, is there anything that we're losing out, or why would people do that?
To my knowledge, none of these properties currently qualify for agricultural valuation. They may be hobby farmers and they may be raising chickens or whatever, but they're getting no tax advantage from the assessor's office or the county.
But if one of these lots then wants to build a structure on it, that's where we get a little...
That's the grandfather that you have, is that currently if they own 5 acres and they signed the certification that they were agricultural properties, building permits were waived. If you grandfather them, I assume building permits in the future will be waived. However, we do have a list of those properties, and like I said, we will be checking them on a periodic basis to make sure that they're not improved, or if they are improved, that they're picked up and added.
And I think that was the concern right from the get-go.
Right.
It was about the building and if it's not being used for what they said. And there was a reason for this back about farming and having to build these quick structures to house farm workers back in the day. But now it's, things have changed. So I'm glad that we're addressing this.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? If not, I'll call for the vote. Or I'll ask for a motion, and then call for the vote.
Okay, so I guess the motion is, and we're going to direct development to adopt the new policy. Is that what our motion is?
Yeah, Supervisor Angus, it's not a county ordinance. It would be a policy and procedure, and typically, actually, we make policies and procedures on department level, but this is such an important issue that would, if the board approves that policy and procedure, then that's what Development Services will follow, and the assessor will follow that policy and procedure.
Mr. Hunt, wouldn't it be appropriate, though, since we're basically clarifying or adding or putting fleshing out state law,
Right.
that we bring this back as basically as an ordinance so that we can view, because we have a lot of backup data, and I think really the public should be involved, and I think it's more appropriately handled as an ordinance, complete with publication, because we are affecting property owners' rights.
Right, I agree with that.
Yes, sir. We'd be glad to do that if that's what the board.
I would make a motion that we direct Developmental Services to draft a proposed ordinance, bring it back to the board for review and consideration, and then we will follow the appropriate process for consideration and enactment.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
The question on that, Supervisor Moss, can we have at the same time a list of all, if there's that small a number, and that few buildings that have been built, a list of all buildings that have been permitted under that too, or not permitted but have been built?
Is that logistically feasible? I see the assessor's office is nodding that that is logistically feasible, so I will amend my motion to include
And I'll second.
that condition.
Second.
May I make a comment, Madam Chair, Supervisor Moss?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson, for us to bring back all the properties that have agricultural exemption that we can do, definitely we have good records, but the buildings on those properties, we have no record. That would be a tremendous job to go out and inspect every one of them, and actually by statute, we have not inspected any of those. They have similar exemption like mining companies do. We don't go out and inspect their buildings, and so to go out and look at all the buildings where there was built, that would be a big job.
I think what the assessor's saying is, a lot of them haven't been built on, they just applied for it. So I think the number is probably small if you only had 300 to begin with. If we just find out, and the assessor can probably help us with that, the ones that have buildings on them, so we have a number to go forward with. The problem we had, and you recall when I first came in, we didn't have any building codes in the county.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very little, so we initiated building codes so that somebody who comes and buys a house knows that they at least meet a certain standard. And now here you're getting, we just at least want to know that people have built, or if there are properties, you want to be able to let the buyer know, or beware that these properties were not built to the codes.
So I assume you just want us to go out and inspect and just count the buildings just to verify there's a building there or not. Because you're absolutely right. Before 2007, there were no building codes either.
Right.
And then and all of them that have exemptions, they didn't get a permit anyway, even after 2007. So we don't know anything about those buildings, but just counting the buildings, yeah, that's we'll do it.
Right. That's something. Yeah, there's 4 houses, and I don't really care about chicken coops or barns or any of that. But.
Thank you for the clarification.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Going on to item number
Surprise you a little bit.
30, discussion of possible action, Ray status report, including billing on the written opinion requested on Jeffrey A. Burnick of Jackson Lewis and at the board's October 19th, 2015 meeting, item number 38, to review the legal parameters of the board's authority and make policy changes to employee benefits, including leave policies. Supervisor Johnson, this is under your name.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if the board, I never have seen anything from the firm as actually what their work product was. If it has been submitted, if we could be submitted to all of us.
Okay. Supervisor Angus, can you address that?
I don't. I had not spoken to Mr. Burnick since we had that one call. So maybe Mike Hendricks knows something more.
Maybe didn't bill us. We may keep our mouth shut.
As far as I'm aware, we haven't received anything from the attorney.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think we had, other than that one call, he said he'd be at our disposal, but I don't think we've utilized it or have been billed anything else for it.
do we want to suggest that either our county administrator or Supervisor Angus attempt to contact Mr. Burnick and give us an update as to what's the status of the report that we requested?
I guess only if we paid him. We haven't paid him.
Have we paid? Okay, I'll call him. I'll be happy to do that.
All right.
Well, if we haven't paid him, then there's no sense calling because the bills by the attorneys are.
Well, that really depends on the end result we want to reach.
So,
If I might, I was a little confused because I thought his opinion was going to be in writing, and since we never received an opinion in writing, maybe he's not going to bill us.
well, I think that's what Supervisor Johnson's asking.
What's the status of that
Yeah,
opinion in
is it
writing?
forthcoming, or is he just waiting for further instructions? So I'll find that out.
So if you can, I think there's really no action that needs to be taken. We just ask Supervisor Angus to contact him, and you can report back.
Okay.
All right, moving on then to item number 31. This is under Supervisor Moss's name. Discussion and possible action reference, direct staff to prepare and bring back a resolution calling upon the BLM.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. I just texted my staff, and Yvonne said that we have paid $4,828. I apologize for interrupting you, though.
Oh, good.
You just had a phone call.
Well, maybe he's working on something.
All right, now I'll make that call today.
That would be a good idea.
All right, thank you very much for that information. So, still no action on item 30, and moving on to item 31, discussion of possible action, direct staff to prepare and bring back a resolution calling upon the BLM to reduce the borough population to less than 817 within the next fiscal year, or the county will, A, seek legislation authorizing state agencies to issue hunting permits to bring the local borough population within acceptable and safe limits, or B, pursued litigation to compel the BLM to comply with the management plan. Supervisor Moss?
Oh, yes, thank you. First off, I want to correct something. I said less than 817. Apparently, that number is incorrect. It should be less than 478, according to the BLM's report. At the time that report was drafted, there was 817 boroughs in that area, and there should have only been 478. According to the BLM and Arizona Game and Fish and some others, there are currently between 1,400 to 1,800 boroughs in the Black Mountain management area, which is inclusive of the Colorado River area, Kingman, Bullhead City, Lake Havasu, etc. It's becoming a problem in that the BLM has not adequately maintained the herds at acceptable levels. That's causing some adverse impacts upon the ecosystem and native species. The burros not being native, they're being native to North Africa. The burros have no natural predators to keep their population down because they evolved in an area where they had to deal with lions and hyena packs, and we don't have those types of predators in Mohave County, Arizona, or the Southwest. So, over time, their populations increase. They get to the point where they exceed what the ecosystem can support, and they begin to push out species such as the bighorn sheep, the mule deer, desert quail, songbirds, others that have been listed by the Game and Fish. They're all competing for the same resources. They all require water. The way the burros interact with the water is not the same as the native species interaction with the water, and they essentially foul the pools. Because there is no predators, there's really only 5 general ways of dealing with the burros. Some are more humane than the others. For example, one is sterilization or contraception. There is contraception that will work to control the burros for limited times. You can bait them on the ground, but that really depends upon you getting to the burros and they actually consuming the contraception, which according to BLM is touch and go considering the size of their range. And if they take it by ingestion, it's only good for a year. So it's not a really good long-term fix. There's also hand interjection, but that's very expensive because you actually have to capture the burro, inject them with the contraception, and that's only good for 22 months. And of course, there's sterilization. That's the first way of controlling the herds. The second way is capture and adoption. That actually has had some success. I believe there's been 200,000 or so adopted over the last several decades. There's capture and relocation. The downside with that is the BLM is tasked with not expanding the wild horse or burro, in our area it's burros, range because, again, they have no natural predators. You put them someplace, they're going to increase in size. Capture and sale, this causes an outcry because they frequently get sold to meat processors. And then, of course, you have culling the herd, which is hunting and other things which result in the destruction of the burros individually. The BLM is in a bit of a jam because when they establish these adoption centers, they can't adopt all the burros they capture. There are literally many, many thousands of burros being pinned right now across the American Southwest, which are awaiting adoption. And if they're not adopted, they're eventually destroyed. But they are maintained in the meantime at great expense to the taxpayer. All of that is very interesting, and it should be of public concern. The problem, it could be, and people should interact with the BLM when it comes to addressing those public concerns, because Mohave County in the state of Arizona, under current law, has absolutely no ability to do anything with the burros. We can't touch them if they're killed on the roadway. We have to call a BLM employee to remove them from the roadway. We can do nothing. And this becomes of great concern to entities like Mohave County, because we are one of the entities tasked with promoting and protecting the public safety. BLM is tasked with protecting and maintaining the burro population and the wild horse population. We are tasked with maintaining public safety. In the Bullhead City area, and I'm going by memory, in the last 3 weeks or so, we have had 4 burros killed on the Bullhead City Parkway alone. All of them by auto collisions. Fortunately, I don't believe there's been any serious injuries as of yet, though the motor vehicles have been destroyed, but it's only going to be a matter of time before somebody is killed. It's my belief, and I believe there's some support from this on some of the data I've read from Bureau of Land Management and Arizona Game and Fish, that because the burro population has increased to some multiplier of their sustainable population, that means they have to extend their range. And because they're extending their range, they're going into inhabited areas to which many thousands of cars pass through these roads every day, and statistically, some are going to be hit and killed. And it's becoming to the point that we, as the entity that's tasked with promoting public safety, need to have something done. I would prefer that what is done would be humane. I personally think sterilization and relocation and adoption is the best solution. But regardless of what is done, something needs to be done. And if that means hunting, I don't want it, but I think our end result is getting the herds down to a manageable size, period. And BLM needs to have public pressure put upon them to get it put down to manageable size. And we, as believe the county, need to put that pressure to get the herd down to a manageable size, because otherwise it's going to become unmanageable, and we're going to have ecological problems. We're going to have problems to our public safety, and there's going to be an outcry. And that outcry will generate a demand for solutions, and depending on how tragic the motivating event is that results in that outcry, we could be looking at some inhumane solutions that are pushed upon the BLM. So, if people want to address the problem, deal with the problem, and do so while it's still in early stages, I think it's out of hand now, but it's going to get to the point that it's going to be even worse. We need to act now. We need to push BLM. I believe there's many other counties who are of similar agreement with us on this. I believe we're the first to take a bright line step, but there'll be others following in our wake, and I believe Arizona Game and Fish is on board with Mohave County and the other counties. And I believe at the current time that we need to be seeking a legislative change. We need to be empowering Arizona's Game and Fish Department to take actions in cooperation with local government in order to keep the herds down to a manageable level, because BLM has not been able to do it. I also say that as part of this legislative change, when I was reading the statute and I was speaking with some interested persons within the community, and I give them a shout out, but they probably don't want to be identified, is there was something that I noticed within the federal law, which I think is an omission which needs to be corrected. They do have an adoption program, but we should also include the option of just simply giving the captured burros away to 501c3 corporations after they've been appropriately sterilized, and given into their care. And if they want to establish burro farms or burro ranges on their private land, that would be, I think, a good solution to relieving the pressures on the pens, the burro pens that are currently being set up throughout the Southwest. I also want to note that there's a gentleman in the area who owns 4,000 acres, and perhaps Supervisor Angus can help me with his name. I'm spacing it. But he has offered to engage with the BLM and make that 4,000 acres of his privately held land available for temporary storage of burros. Again, I think they need to be sterilized in case they're accidentally or unintentionally released from that range. But that is the type of action we need if we're going to avoid culling. So I believe that this board should direct our staff to put together a resolution to bring back to our next meeting, which outlines those issues and is very strongly worded and puts all options on the table, legislatively and otherwise, but announces or emphasizes that we as a board would prefer public-private partnerships, that we prefer humane solutions, but we must, as in keeping with our mandatory statutory responsibilities, ensure that the public safety is corrected and these herds do not get too large. And I'd be glad to answer any other questions from any other board member.
I guess the only question I'd have, Mr. Chair, or Madam Chairman, for Supervisor Moss would be, we just did a resolution last August, and we did one 2 years ago with Supervisor Watson, I think, did it. I think they ignore our resolutions.
Well, that's why I used some pretty hard language in this particular proposal, and it seems to be getting some attention, unlike our several last couple resolutions.
And then the other question I would have is, I don't know that, and I guess maybe Attorney Ekstrom can let us know, but we do have that, 1971 Wild Horse and Burro Act. I don't know that we have, that our state legislature could even do anything as far as controlling, because you hit it on the head. I mean, I don't want people beating up BLM because they don't have the money. I mean, they can round all they want up, but now they're just keeping them in pens, so it's really, you know, a money pit for them. I don't know, Mr. Ekstrom, can the state legislature even do anything?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, I think we've been preempted by the federal government. I haven't read those statutes recently, but I'm sure that's the case. And of course, the state has no more revenue available than does the federal government.
And that's why my proposal on this issue is that we seek legislation, which would be federal legislation, which would authorize our state agencies, including their subsidiaries like Mohave County, to take action when the public safety threshold has been met. So we really have two options here, legal options. And no one's advocating, and I think I saw some papers which their headlines kind of implied we're going to go out tomorrow and start shooting, though they actually were more or less accurate once you got to the body of the story. But no one is advocating that we're going to go out there and shoot burros. But that is a potential cure. That's a potential cure that neither us nor the state of Arizona currently can act upon. But we need a solution, and we need to do one of two things. And it's in the alternative in my proposal, the proposed motion. One, we need to seek federal legislation which authorizes the BLM to work with local governments, which is more, I saw some emails from some BLM employees referencing partnerships. So, you know, I was like, there's no partnership. A partnership means an equal say. So we are not partners. Okay, we are being dictated to, or more correctly, we're being ignored. And so we're not partners, but we need federal legislation which would actually acknowledge us as a partnership status. The other alternative, of course, and I believe that more and more counties and various state agencies are leaning this direction, is that we pursue litigation against the BLM. I don't want to beat them up. It's not personal, but they're not meeting their statutory responsibilities. And we need to force them to meet their statutory responsibilities, because at the present time they're not, and that's getting in the way of us fulfilling our job responsibilities, which is protecting public safety.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Watson.
Just a couple of things to add. And one of the things that brought this crisis on, of course, was the Wild Horse and Burro Act itself, but also the USDA has shut down all the packing houses that produce proteins from these animals. So you have kind of a two problems existing at the same time. You've got a rising population, and just to point out that just a few years ago it was 400 and some odd. Now we're to 18. Now, I've been in the livestock industry for a number of years and been watching this problem. This will double in 4 years. We're currently at 1,800, and in 4 years, 3,600 animals will be out there. Believe me, it will be tragic. you'll be seeing animals, many animals, not only the burros and wild horses, but many other animals dying of starvation and inability to get water. Now, this is a terrible crisis to look at, I'm sorry. But I had 258 people contact me on the email, and almost 9 out of every 10 were save the burros, save the burros. And certainly that's what we're trying to do, is to look after the burros for their best. But if we don't absolutely get some cooperation from BLM, the federal government, then I believe we do, and it would be our responsibility to litigate this, because it is a crisis. And believe me, I'm hoping that the 258 people that have emailed us will understand that we're trying to do the right thing. Nobody wants to slaughter the burros. Certainly nobody at this board does. We just want to see this problem handled correctly.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Angus.
I might have a little bit of more insight. I was at an event Saturday night, Arizona Game and Fish and BLM were there. This is not new. Our resolution sort of kicked it up a notch, and so everyone's talking, and the underlying idea is that everybody does want to work together. Arizona Game and Fish did pass a resolution last week in support of our other, so they do get read, in our last couple of resolutions, and they went so far in this resolution to say that if BLM does not step up and fulfill its duty by law, that there will be litigation. So I know Arizona Game and Fish, that's their next step, is litigation. There is a Arizona Game and Fish director out of Yuma. Now, this burro issue is a problem in Mohave County, La Paz County, and Yuma, the river counties, and we have recently put together a river caucus working together on some of these unique problems and issues that we have and that the other counties in Arizona really don't understand, so we can explain it to them. And they are already talking about solutions, and I was approached at this event by the supervisor out of Yuma, who says he has a presentation he'd like to come up here and give to us, either as a board, in a workshop, in a public meeting where everybody can understand that the problem at a state level and what is being thought about as possible solutions. Then there's a new director of BLM. His name is Ray Swarzo. He seemed very open to working with us. So I think that some of this that happened in the last couple of weeks has kicked the door open to all the different agencies wanting to work together, because nobody wants to, they don't have money. But I think there's more money than we think. I've been told by Senator McCain's office that it's really, they have money, it's an allocation problem of where they're going to put their resources. And up until recently, we really haven't had any representation. We haven't had any representation at the Wild Horse and Burro Advisory Committee in Washington. We're trying to get a local person on that. That will go a long way to helping that. But some of this has to be done politically during the budget also, is to say some of that money has to be allocated to Arizona, and frankly, we really haven't had that, that help. So there's a lot to be done, and I would like staff to put together a meeting, if that's what the chairman would like, either a workshop or at a future board meeting, but they have expressed that they wanted to do it quickly, because there's a lot happening that they wanted to tell us about.
Okay, thank you. These burros are incredibly intelligent, and they're social animals, as we see with the interaction in the open area, but they're not native to Arizona, and they compete with our wildlife for habitat. It's my desire that we work with the BLM, with Arizona Game and Fish, with all the stakeholders to implement humane control measures, whatever that might be. The BLM must find a way to control this ever-increasing population. It's totally multiplying, and I think that's been pointed out by all the supervisors. We cannot continue to support the burros in the manner that we've been doing with the BLM. I want to see the BLM take control of this situation and reduce the population immediately, and I think the funding that's that's there is housing the burros that are not adoptable and buying feed, and if that money was put to different uses, maybe it'd be more effective. But with that being said, I did, like Supervisor Watson, receive several hundred emails, and there were lots of social media posts and private messaging from people who just love these burros. But these people are mostly from cities, and they haven't been out here to actually see the damage that the burros do. So I want to see us accomplish our goals for increased safety and environmental management without harming these burros, if we can do that. And any solution dealing with this has to be all of the solutions. It just can't be a piecemeal, like birth control or relocation. It has to be implemented into a workable plan. So with that, I'd like to hear from the people that have signed up to speak on this issue. There's not that many, and I'll start out with the first person on my list, and that's Mr. Don Martin. If you'd like to come up and share your thoughts with us, you have 3 minutes. If you'd give us your name and address, please.
My name is Don Martin, 2644 Broken Arrow Street in Kingman. I'm a conservationist, and I've been working on the burro situation for many, many years. In 1993, we started a committee that was called the Black Mountain Ecosystem Planning Team. I was on that team as a representative of the Mohave Sportsman Club for 3 years. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went down with that because we had a litany of groups involved in that thing, but we finally come up with this plan. And this plan absolutely outlines what was supposed to be done. It was not anti-burro. The authorized management level was set at 478 animals. There's an oatman exemption in there for burros and oatman to take care of those folks' concerns. But the main thing is the Black Mountains and the ecosystem team or plan cannot sustain an unchecked number of burros. You're at 3 times and approaching 4 times the number that were authorized to be there. This plan was signed, by the way, by the Bureau of Land Management, by the lady that represented the International Association of Mustangs and Burros. And when we did this, we were told that this was approved at the highest level. This was Bruce Babbitt, the Secretary of the Interior, who recognized something had to be done. Right now, there are 30,000 animals in their burro pens. There's another 14,000 animals in various holding pens. There's another 6,000 animals nationwide in inmate programs. It is costing the BLM millions of dollars. In 2015, in 3 months, they spent $35 million on paying for support and housing of burros that have already been captured. The problem is very simple. It's not these local BLM guys that have a problem. Their hands are tied. The federal people up above them, there's no place to put these burros. You can't shoot them. The Wild Horse and Burro Act will absolutely prohibit that. But you have to lean on these jokers to make them come to the table and get these burros. The problem is, where are you going to put them? And I submit that all these plans to do great wondrous things, sterilize them, what are you going to do with the 50-some thousand that are already in captivity? You got to do something with them. You're going to have to make some hard choices. I absolutely applaud what this board is doing by leading and taking this out and hopefully work with your agent and other partners. One thing to consider, burros are not wild animals. They are not managed by Arizona Game and Fish. They are not wild animals, so understand that. So with that being said, like I say, you're doing a great job. Keep after it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Martin on the board? All right.
Just for the record, so what year is it? 1971 Wild Horse and Burro Act prohibits killing.
That was started by Wild Horse Annie, and it was a bunch of warm and fuzzies back east. They weren't Western people, and they got this law passed to protect wild burros, which again, they're feral exotics. They're not native here. But understanding that and understanding other people's needs, you know, that was one thing, but they have went way overboard, and that legislation has to be changed to allow the agencies the agency, which is BLM, to manage them in a manner that they can control their numbers, however that has to be. So that's where that's at.
Thank you.
I have a question for Don.
Yeah, Supervisor Watson.
Don, could you tell me how many members are on that national board?
I think they're on the National Wild Horse Advisory Board, there's like 16 members or something like that. I'll point this out. They have met one time in Laughlin, Nevada in the last 35 years. That's as close as they came to Mohave County. They went on a field trip in the Black Mountains at that time that I was with them, and I heard some of the most incredulous statements ever being made, such as wild horse or burros are in a symbiotic relationship with desert bighorn sheep and actually dig water holes for sheep. That's the mentality that I heard from the national level. So that's what our problems are.
I think it might be indicative of the fact that most of those people are from back east of the Mississippi. I think there's only 2 members that are from the west.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you, Don.
I know I went to the site of the Wild Burro Protection League and the American Wild Horse Preservation Campaign, and they have some beautiful, beautiful pictures that would make anybody fall in love with a burro or a horse. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. Okay, the next speaker, and I'm going by distance traveled now, is Lisa Brothers. She's come to us from the Phoenix area, so if you'd approach the podium and give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes, and thank you for coming to Kingman.
Madam Chairman, Board of Supervisors, thank you for having me speak today. My name is Lisa Brothers. I'm from New River, Arizona. I'm a volunteer.
Could you speak up a little bit or bring the mic down?
Sorry,
please?
I'm recovering from a cold, so I apologize.
Yeah, that's better.
My name is Lisa Brothers. I came here today from New River, Arizona. I'm a volunteer of the Salt River Wild Horse Management Group. I'm here to speak to you today about the enormous public support that wild horses and burros have. Perhaps you have seen some of the news pieces about our Salt River wild horses and how the public of Arizona wants to see them preserved for future generations to come. Perhaps you have already noticed by your letter the number of responses that you've received from the public. We, as the taxpayers, citizens, do not like it when our burros or wild horses are threatened to be shot. You may not see it, but the American public does. Wild horses and burros have value, emotional value, scientific value, historical value, financial value, tourism value, and aesthetic value. Many people like looking into the desert when there's not much else to see alive and seeing these wild, iconic creatures living wild and free. There are many problems out there with our public lands, such as enormous population of bullets and garbage people leave, the ATVers causing damage to our fragile ecosystems. The burros are the least of the problem. They do not poop aluminum cans or bullets. They poop free fertilizer that benefit and improve the water observation of the soil and spread seeds for which provide for a bed of new growth. Humane management on the range is very possible, and it's very cost-effective through solutions. Let's talk about this in a reasonable manner. Who's responsible for fixing the fencing along the roads? Are the ATVers cutting the fencing to allow them to go through the desert areas? Are people feeding the burros along the roadside? Or are they just thirsty? Fixing fencing is more cost-effective than flying helicopters. To round them up, the BLM holding sites are full. This process has proved not to be a sustainable option. Also, it is very possible through humane immune contraception of PCP to reduce the herd size over time without removing one single burro. The BLM is already looking into these measures, and they've already removed over 30 burros from the Black Mountain HMA. Since they're simply...
Very much.
Thank you.
All All right, our next speaker will be Mr. Lawrence Marsala, coming to us from the Phoenix, Arizona area. Please state your name and address.
Lawrence Marsala, 4828 East Peyote Street, Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for giving me a minute here, or actually 3, to speak to you. I'd like to first say this is not a new problem. This is a problem that's existed for a long, long time. Many solutions have been out there, and so far, none have worked. And that's because the solutions being put forward don't work except for one: go out there and shoot them. That is also the solution that, if you'll see, the public is going to be highly, highly against. And as your emails and stuff is just a small indicative of that. I would like to propose to you a couple other items which have not been mentioned, which actually solve the problem. And that is what Supervisor Moss said over and over again: there is no predators. Well, that is actually because we are killing the predators. If you look here, is that the wolves and the big cats that actually live here are your solution to your problem. But we have not made it a priority to bring back the predators out there, which are the normal solution to go and keep our ecosystem in balance. When you look at the areas where the wolves have been brought back, how much the ecosystem at all levels have went and improved. So I would like you to go back through, and you say it's got to be the BLM. That's correct. But if you look at the BLM's history, even back in the Sonora Desert, where they bent the court, and the court has ruled that they need to do something, have still refused to do it. So there is a big problem. So yes, a lot of pressure needs to come back through. I would say is that it needs to be put out in the strongest terms at the humane measures of the going back through with the sterilization, and other things. But number one is to restore the normal predator relationship. And the other part is that no burro would be shot as long as you have cow grazing rights in land. So is that the BLM should take the areas which are being leased for cow grazing and move the burros over there before you start to shoot any, and to put the money back into restoring the natural predators that we do have here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marcel. Our next speaker is coming to us from Tempe, Ms. Jewel Blackfeather. Good morning. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Jewel Blackfeather Welter. I'm on 995 East Baseline Road in Tempe, Arizona. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
I came here today to speak up for the burros and the American public's interest in protecting them. Americans cherish and value our wild animals like burros as historic and national treasures. Polls show that a majority of Americans support protecting these iconic animals and their habitats. Instead of making inflammatory statements about hunting and killing our beloved burros, I would urge our board and county to instead work cooperatively with the BLM to implement humane solutions that will protect public safety and keep these wonderful animals wild. The wild burros of this area are enjoyed by thousands of visitors to the area annually. They are a fixture of the drive along the historic Route 66. They hold great tourism value, and your board should support their protection instead of calling for their extermination. The Black Mountain burro herd is one of the last genetically strong burro herds left in the U.S. The BLM has kept burro herds at such low numbers that most populations are compromised by inbreeding, and they are genetically threatened as a result. I request that your board work with the BLM to create and implement cooperative and creative solutions to address public safety and habitat concerns. Instead of removals, please work with the BLM on the following measures: construction of fencing to keep burros out of roadways and within HMA boundaries, repair and restoration of water sources within the HMA to ensure adequate distribution across and utilization of the whole habitat area, PZP birth control to manage population numbers and reduce it over time, a public-private partnership between the BLM, and local and state agencies, and borough and humane advocacy groups will bring private resources to the table and foster community involvement and cooperation. In conclusion, I oppose the removal of boroughs from the Black Mountain HMA and urge your board to endorse humane and cost-effective management solutions.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next speaker is Patricia Campbell from Lake Havasu City. Okay, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Patricia Campbell. I'm from 3310 Tolteca Drive, Lake Havasu City. And I've lived here for over 44 years. And I've owned a lot of property and paid a lot of property taxes in Mohave County. I remember seeing wild burros out in the desert out since 1971. It was wonderful. People loved them, especially the tourists. And it may have been the only time in their lives that these people have ever seen a wild burro, and they may never see another one. They'd come up and eat right out of your hands at the local market. You can bet all those tourists left our fine state and had a picturesque story to tell their family and friends when they got back to their home states. If these burros were born here, it is their natural habitat, and they belong here as much as we do. They're kind, gentle, and intelligent creatures, and I am so ashamed of whoever would consider the inhumane hunting of these beautiful historic creatures. I know there's better ways to handle their management, and BLM should be held accountable for this mismanagement. They have not been doing their job, or their priorities have been seriously mismanaged. There's no excuse for it, and there's no compassion in hunting them. Where is our humanity in that? That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Herbert Cornelius from Lake Havasu City. Good morning.
Good
Please
morning.
state your name
My
and
name's
address.
Herbert Cornelius.
Thank you.
I live at 850 Bryce Court, Lake Havasu City. And I'm just here and hoping that there won't be any hunting permits for these burros that's been with us for 100 years. Whether they're indigenous to this country or not doesn't really mean anything. They've been our friends for a lot of years. They're not game animals like deer or elk. They won't run. They could hunt them with a baseball bat probably, because you could walk right up to them and put them down. The thousands of visitors that come here every year to visit Oatman, Route 66, Kingman, Lake Havasu City, whatever else, they expect to see burros. And I think it's part of our heritage to keep them. The off-roaders tear up the environment a lot more than I think that our burros do, and maybe some of that attention need to be directed to that. Our laws on off-roaders are very lax. People come from California, ride all over our city, and just tear the place up. Right now, our city's just overwhelmed with snowbirds outside of both ends of our city. They're camped all over the desert out there. The impact on our desert areas out there is something needs to be done. I mean, but don't issue any hunting license. I think that birth control is the answer. It's not an immediate answer, but maybe next year it would reduce the herd and keep them from multiplying as fast as they do. They're just doing the natural thing. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much for coming to Kingman. Our next speaker is Ms. Carmen Johnson from Golden Valley.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Good morning,
Supervisors. My name is Carmen Johnson. I'm a resident of Golden Valley. Each of you should have a letter before you where I have stated a few things. This trying to get BLM to do their job is a waste of paper. They're going to claim that they don't have the funding. More than likely they don't. The federal government has been very active in taking people's money. I know something has to be done. I don't like the thought of the borough being killed, but what are we going to do? I think we ought to get volunteers, these guys on the UTVs, ATVs, to gather up the burros, have them, just like when we adopt a puppy, have them spayed or neutered, and drop the adoption fee and let private citizens adopt these burros. I would say probably 1 burro to an acre. Gives them plenty of room, plenty of grazing. Ensure that there is proper housing and fencing for them. I don't think we're going to need to even bother to ask the BLM to do something. At home I have 69 pages of articles from the Bullhead Bee, and one of them, I want to say 2008, shows that the BLM is saying, hey, we don't have the money, just like you guys do when you decide you want to raise our taxes. It's the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Mr. Wayne Hollins from Golden Valley.
My name is Wayne Holland. I live in Golden Valley. I just have a couple things to say. I don't like the idea of just going out and killing the burros. Although starving them, shooting them, euthanizing them, what's the difference? We do need to reduce the numbers. The BLM, they're supposed to be managing them. They're not doing it, so they need to be forced to do that. And for all the people who don't want the burros shot or done away with in whatever means, how many of them have adopted a burro? Yeah, you don't want things, but you don't want to be part of the solution either. So if you don't want them shot and moved, we also have a lot of land east of the Mississippi that don't have burros. Maybe we should donate some so they can find out how we live out here in the West. That's all I have.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker from Kingman is Lisa Molitor. Please correct me in the pronunciation of your name and state your address.
My name is Lisa Molitor. I live at 2964 North Melody Street in Kingman, Arizona. And I wanted to address this borough issue we have, obviously. Clearly, no one has the right to act because of the federal Free Roaming Horses and Burro Act of 1971. So at the moment, there's nothing you can do whether you want to or not. Obviously, there's a population problem. We understand that. But I am extremely against turning this into a blood sport where you are going to hunt them. I think that is unconscionable. There's got to be, sterilization along with birth control measures, along with adequate fencing, along with water sourcing in their area. And as far as the accidents that are caused, I would like to know the data on how many accidents happen in Mohave County. And then I'd like to know the data on how many accidents in Mohave County have been caused by burros. I bet it will be very minuscule. So, as a citizen, I think there's another way. I think that it will be a variety of, putting agencies together and a variety of measures to help control this population. But if this population needs to be culled in some manner, please make it a humane manner. Respectfully, don't turn this into a blood sport. I think that's completely unacceptable, and I don't think the population of people here is going to tolerate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Sean and Elsie Heron. I assume that you're husband and wife, so if you want to come down together, that'd be fine.
We're two individual people with two very, very seriously different opinions.
A normal couple, thank you.
Thank you, yes. And if you say something to me that needs to be said to my husband, I won't know about it unless you say it to me. My name is Elise Heron. I live at 2128 East Whitetail Lane, 40 miles east of Kingman, in the middle of nowhere. I appreciate that Supervisor Moss proposed this item somewhat in jest, because I know nobody intends on hunting burros. What every single one of you supervisors has pointed out is that the BLM is not doing their job. There's a few people in the audience that haven't figured that out yet. So let's send them out of Arizona via the American Lands Council, headed by Ken Ivory out of Utah, who's doing a fabulous job of tending to us 13 states in the western United States who need to take our lands back. They don't belong here. The federal government doesn't have any right or any purpose or any legitimate constitutional reason to be here mismanaging our burros or anything else for that matter. Sorry, I'm a little passionate about this. So, going back to your actual problem at hand, again, that's AmericanLandsCouncil.org, Ken Ivory. He's working for all of us and we don't know it. But going back to your problem, there's a little clinic here in Kingman. They call themselves the low-cost spay-neuter clinic. And every 3 or 4 months, these people roust out 30 to 40 volunteers that gather up 100 or 150 cats, and on a volunteer-free basis, they spay and neuter and release these cats. Guess what? These burros are a problem for the ranching community. How about if we go out to our Cattlemen's Association and let's roust up, we don't even need 30 or 40. We need 8 or 10 motivated ranchers on horseback with dogs. Let's round up these burros. Let's not use the chemical stuff that lasts 12 months or 22 months, and I'm going to go over my time. Let's castrate the jacks. Let's do that. Let's castrate every single one of them. It's very inexpensive. And if you don't want these guys to gather, we can use catch fences, borrow 60 or 80 panels, put a catch gate on the front of it, throw a big old bay of yummy hay on the inside and some water, and let's capture 20 or 30 at a time, and then send out 3 or 4 volunteers to throw a rope on them, toss them down, castrate the jacks, and turn them loose. Over time, you'll come down to manageable numbers. But bottom line, BLM is not doing their job, period, at all, acknowledged by every single one of you. So let's get behind the bigger problem and call me when you want help with your burros. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heron, and I'm very glad that I didn't take your time away from you. Mr. Heron, it's your turn.
Good morning. My name is Sean Heron, 2128 East Whitetail Lane. My opinions are pretty on line with my wife's. I do believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg to a much larger issue, to an overreaching, abusive, and mismanaging branch of the federal government, which is the BLM. Powers of the federal government, as enumerated in the Constitution, consist of 4 powers given to the federal government. Power over foreign trade, how to resolve conflicts between the states, the national defense, and the proper way to grow and expand the country. Nowhere in the documents was the federal government granted ownership or even power over the land or animals within the sovereign borders of a state, and quite specifically in Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 8, spells out very carefully that the federal government cannot have ownership of any lands within a state unless its use pertains to the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Even this limited intrusion of state lands must be with the consent of the governed. We the people, from which all government authority is derived. We have not and will not consent to these usurpations by federal agencies. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. It is time for the Board of Supervisors to petition to the state and to summon support from other counties in the state to demand the federal government that all lands within the sovereign borders of the state of Arizona be immediately turned over to the state's ownership and management. We the people, the governed, will no longer consent to the abuses of power from a corrupt government. We will stand and defend from further abuses, utilizing all of our natural rights. Please make the right decisions, do your jobs, petition and rally support to bring these lands into the control of the state of Arizona and protect the citizens, animals, and lands of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everybody that came here today to speak, and for all the people that sent the many hundreds of emails and the social media posts. It's all very, very helpful. It's obvious that the BLM's adoption program and other efforts to control these local rural populations are very inadequate. State and local agencies are prohibited from managing our local population despite being charged with protecting the public safety. So what I would like to see here today is something similar to what Supervisor Angus suggested. I think we should organize a special meeting within the next couple of weeks where representatives from the Game and Fish, the BLM, La Paz County, Yuma County, Mohave County, we all get together and sit down in a forum or a workshop and discuss how we can come up with different ideas and solutions to control the problem. At that time, the meeting might be an appropriate forum for more discussion and letters coming in from the community. So that's what I'd like to see happen, but I'd like to hear from the other supervisors in closing before we call for a motion, and we'll start with Supervisor Moss.
I actually like your suggestion, Supervisor Bishop, Madam Chair. We've had 2 resolutions, I think, within the last 2 years already dealing with this, and it got absolutely no attention, which goes to prove that if you want attention and if you want to direct your people's eyesights to a problem, you have to shock them, you have to scare them, because asking pretty please and sending a nice note doesn't do the trick. So what I would like to see is exactly what you said, is that we do a workshop within the very near future regarding some of the things that have come up today. I mean, introducing predators to this environment, I'm not certain is the answer, because the predators we have available in Arizona, mountain lions and wolves, they're not as high up the chain as lions and hyenas. So, and I don't want to introduce lions and hyenas to Mohave County. But that's an issue. That's something to discuss. And when it comes to the adoption fees, I think you're right. They should be absolutely eliminated. And the people who have sufficient acreage and civic organizations who are nonprofit have sufficient acreage, they shouldn't be limited in how much they can adopt. Because right now they have, I think, a limit of 4 or something along those lines under the law. When it comes to the game and fish, I think Mr. Martin is right. They're not a game animal. They are an exotic feral animal, but they're not a game animal. So that's why we need to focus on legislation so that we can have more of a say in the management of these herds, because the BLM isn't doing it. And if you look back since 1971, things get out of hand. There's an outcry. They correct it temporarily. A few years go by, it gets out of hand, and they eventually correct it temporarily. We need a long-term solution. We need a sustainable population which works within the ecosystem they're present, and we can't be letting them get to 2, 3, 4, 5 times the population limit before someone finally acts. I'm not calling for a vote or making a motion, because I think all supervisors need to speak, but I would personally favor that we have a workshop where we invite various state and county agencies to cooperate, and then maybe at that point in time, we can craft a resolution which can't be soft-shoed. We can't do the nice politically correct ones that we do in the past. We have to be hard. We have to say extreme things that get things done. So.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Watson?
I just wanted to recommend possibly that this would be the top issue that the Colorado River Caucus might want to entertain at the CSA. It's certainly, we've gotten to the point where if we don't act today, tomorrow, next week, this crisis will be so bad that it will be very hard to cure. When we get up to 3,600 animals in this ecosystem, it will be totally destroyed. And I wish the folks that were emailing us over the weekend would take a little more consideration of learning our area. We have a very delicate ecosystem there. For 400 animals to be entertained in that area, and that was taken at a time which we had a great deal of precipitation, a great deal more water, rainfall in the 80s when that was done, and I believe Mr. Martin would probably agree with me on that. So in all likelihood, even that ecosystem is even further degraded. We have to ask soon. There's nothing worse than seeing an animal starve to death or one that dehydrates to death. It's terrible, so we have to act now.
Okay, Supervisor Angus.
Yes, and just to reiterate what I said before, we're not alone now in our voice. There's a lot of different ideas and agencies who have come up with some solutions they think are very viable. And I think it had something to do with how we kicked it up. And I want to say everyone who did email us, and I got the same emails, is we're not doing this sort of haphazardly. This is a big problem, like Supervisor Watson just said, and it affects our constituents. And I wish people would really take the time to really understand the issue and what we can and cannot do. So I think I would like, as soon as possible, to have this public meeting where we can talk about the solutions. Like I said, there's a gentleman from Arizona Game and Fish out of Yuma who everyone's excited about his ideas. Our legislators, I spoke to Senator McCain. I know he wants to work with us, so now's the time. And I think we will all work together and come up with a humane solution that will take care of this problem.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Johnson.
Well, I think the only answers we have are, and I don't go for work sessions because nothing can be voted on or accomplished as far as I can see, but if we want to have Fish and Game who wants to push for legal action, that's great to have them come in front of us and give us their presentation and see if we can join in. Because like you said, like all the other board members have said, the only other option we have is to the federal level. So we either meet with Fish and Game, and I mean the other counties have always been slow and dragging their feet to join us in our other fights. So, I have no interest in. If they want to join us, great. If not, then we move ahead by ourselves.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Supervisor Moss.
Supervisor Watson made the comment about this newly formed river caucus between ourselves, La Paz County and Yuma County. And I believe we had our first meeting, Supervisor Angus and I attended a few weeks ago. And I do believe that we agreed that for our first project as a caucus, as a community, that we would tackle the borough issue. That's something that we had unanimous agreement on. There's a public safety issue there. There's an ecological issue there. There's a native species issue there. And we need to make sure that if we're going to preserve the boroughs for future generations, that they're appropriately managed. That's what people don't get. I think they gloss over Supervisor Watson's comments. If the population gets out of hand, they will all die. So we need to keep them at a sustainable level. So.
That's a good, very good point. Thank you for that. So I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we direct staff to set a workshop to which we will invite representatives of BLM, Arizona Game and Fish, and the other two river counties, La Paz and Yuma County, and that they coordinate with each supervisor's office in order to establish an agreeable date and time in the near future. In the meantime, I vote that we table item 31 following the conclusion of that workshop.
Second the motion?
Okay, we have a motion. You said you wanted to table it for?
Until the
Time?
conclusion of the workshop.
Until the
In other words, we need to get BLM's and Game and Fish's information, because despite some people back east's opinion of Mohave County, we are the type that measure twice and cut once.
All right, we do have a clear motion. We have a second by Supervisor Watson. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we have 4-1, and it passes. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn, or second?
All right, we are adjourned. Hammer slammed.